help but think when he was using the $20 million figure, that's two more ISIS fighters that we could have paid for. I refuse to put a price tag on the lives of 4 Americans. I don't, your figure of 20 million is wrong, Mr. Cummings, and that's not what the State Department told us. But I don't care what the figure is. There is no price tag when it comes to justice for 4 people who gave their lives for this country. Madam Secretary, with respect to the ARB, I want to ask you this. If you were investigating Benghazi or what happened in Benghazi, and there was an author of an email 3 months to the day, 3 months to the day from when our 4 fellow Americans were killed, the author of the email says anti-American demonstration, looking for Americans to attack, game changer, soft target, no continuity, the cost to continue to do business there may become challenging. Would you want to talk to the author of that email if you were investigating Benghazi?
The Accountability Review Board had full run of the State Department to talk to anyone they chose to talk to. It's my understanding they conducted more than 100 interviews, and they were well aware, as their report reflects, of the dangerous situation in Libya.
I don't want to interrupt you. That actually was not my question. My question is, would you want to talk to that person? Not whether or not the ARB did, because the ARB actually did talk to that person. My question is, wouldn't you want to talk to that person if you were investigating Benghazi? Well, I promise it is not a trick question. The answer is yes. You would want to talk to the person who authored that email.
And as you just said, Mr. Chairman, the ARB did.
Yes, and the co-chair of the ARB called your chief of staff and told the author of that email not to go to Congress. That's my point. My point is the ARB did some good things. That's why our first 2 hearings were on making sure the recommendations by the ARB were actually implemented. But when the author of that email is going to be brought before Congress and one of the co-chairs calls your chief of staff and says, I don't think that that witness is going to be a good witness, Madam Secretary, with all due respect, she's a fact witness, whether she's good or bad. The author of that email has a right for Congress to question them. I mean, that's not even a close question. So somebody can be a good person, and I have no doubt that Mr. Mullen and Mr. Pickering both are. But this is also what I don't doubt. I don't doubt that that phone call was made to Ms. Mills saying, don't send Charlene Lamb before Congress. She's not going to make a good witness. And I don't doubt that there's not a transcript from any of the ARB interviews. And you may say, well, why does that matter? If you're going to write a report, and you want to write a report with specificity and particularity, you have to cite the transcript. And I can't tell you a single question that was asked of a single ARB witness because there is no transcript. So my point is not that the ARB did a bad job or a good job. My point is from a standpoint of a serious investigation, it was an inadequate job. And I want to hopefully prove that to you. There used to be a stack up there when Mr. Smith was with us about all the previous investigations that Congress and the ARB had done. Did any of those previous congressional investigations or the ARB have access to your emails?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, the witness you were referring to did appear before Congress.
That was not my point.
But your implication was that that witness was stopped from going to Congress.
No,
in fact, that did not happen, Mr. Chairman.
No, she definitely came.
Yes.
No, that's not my implication. My implication is the co-chair of what you call an independent accountability review board was calling someone he was supposed to be investigating to say, please don't send that witness to Congress. They're not going to show up well. That's my point. My point is, how can you consider that to be, I mean,
well,
have you ever heard of a judge calling the DA or the defense attorney and say, don't call that witness?
I really don't care what you all say about me. It doesn't bother me a bit. I do care a lot about what you're implying about Admiral Mullen, and I will not sit here and hear that.
Well,
Admiral Mullen served this country with great distinction. He served the State Department with great distinction in being the co-chair of the Accountability Review Board. And I think his work speaks for itself.
Well,
and I'm sorry that the important work that was done by that board is held in such low regard by some members of this committee, and I deeply regret it.
Are you doubting that he placed the phone call? Is that the purpose
I know
of what
nothing
you're saying?
about the phone call.
Well, I do, because he testified before another congressional committee. He admits it was a mistake, Madam Secretary. I don't know why you can't.
Well-
he admits it was a mistake to call and say, don't send a fact witness before a congressional committee.
Well, I think that
That doesn't
shows-
mean he's a bad person. It just means that when you hold up the ARB as independent, and your chief of staff picked most of the folks on it, Patrick Kennedy had a role in picking some of the folks on the ARB, despite the fact that some people think Patrick Kennedy may have also been involved in approving or not approving. If you need to read a note from your lawyer, you're welcome to, Madam Secretary.
No, it's just hard to sit here listening to the comments you're making about someone that I consider to be a great American. If he said he made a mistake, that's even more proof of what a fine gentleman he is and what a great public servant he's been. It doesn't in any way, what you're saying, impugn his service for 40 years, and certainly not his service on the Accountability Review Board. I can't help it, Mr. Chairman, that you all don't like the findings of the Accountability Review
Ma'am,
Board.
we had
I can't
two
help
hearings.
it that you don't like
We-
the findings
we had
of all
two
the other
hearings.
congressional committees.
We had 2 hearings where we did nothing but discuss the implementation of the ARB findings, Madam Secretary. So with all due respect, we've had more hearings about the ARB findings than we have with you. So don't tell me that we don't care about the ARB. We had 2 hearings. My point is this: the ARB nor the previous congressional investigations had access to your emails, did they?
I don't know what they had access to. I know that during the time I was at the State Department, there was certainly a great effort to respond to your predecessor, Congressman Issa's inquiries, and many thousands of pages of information was conveyed to the Congress. And I know that the State Department has worked diligently and persistently to try to respond to the many requests that it has received. And I think that given the pressure and stress of business they've been under, they have performed as well as they could. So you will be getting, and in fact the entire world will be getting, all of my emails, because they're all going to be public, and you will be able to read them along with everybody else.
Madam Secretary, that actually was not my question. My question was whether or not the previous congressional committees and ARB had access to your emails. That was my question.
90 to 95% of my work-related emails were in the state system. If they wanted to see them, they would certainly have been able to do so.
You know what? That is maybe the 10th time you have cited that figure today.
It is.
And I have not heard anyone other than you ever cite that figure. Who told you that 90 to 95% of your emails were in the State Department system? Who told you that?
We learned that from the State Department in their analysis of the emails that were already on the system. We were trying to help them close some gaps that they had.
Can you
but
provide
they
provide me with a name? Because when I asked the State Department about 10 days ago, what's the source of that figure, they shrugged their shoulders.
Well, you can look for the state.gov addresses, and they certainly pop up. And
Right,
that's
and the
where
Inspector General report, Madam Secretary, the Inspector General report, which you can't argue by perfect analogy, but you can certainly extrapolate, the Inspector General report found that less than 1% of State Department emails, record emails, were captured. So they give a number of less than 1%, and you give a number of 90%.
Well, I don't know what you're referring to. I can only speak about my emails, my work-related emails.
Well,
And
let's talk about your work-related emails. We asked for them last year, and the State Department gave us 8. If they had 90% of yours, why did we only get 8?
Well, I don't know initially what you asked for, but I know that they tried to be responsive. 90 to 95% of them were on state.gov. I understand that the committee broadened the scope of their requests, and I think that in response, the State Department has been trying to provide what you have requested. In the meantime, They're going through the process of making all of my emails public.
You think our first request, there were only 8 emails responsive to our first request?
I can't speak to it. I believe
I can-
your first request was for Benghazi, and I believe that the State Department did a diligent search. Then I believe you expanded it to Libya and weapons and maybe a few other terms, and I believe they
Well,
conducted
our
a
jurisdiction
diligent.
hasn't grown, Madam Secretary. Our jurisdiction is the same thing it was. Let me ask you this. You say that you turned over everything. I don't get a chance to watch you a lot on television, but when I see you are interviewed, you make a point of saying, I turned over everything.
All my work-related emails.
How do you know that?
I know that because there was an exhaustive search done under the supervision of my attorneys, and that is exactly the outcome. We turned over every work-related email. In fact, as somebody referred to earlier, we turned over too many. In the State Department and the National Archives said there were 1,246 out of the 30,000 plus that they've already determined did not need to be turned over.
And you have a
Regular
really
order, Mr.
good group of attorneys, which makes me
Chairman,
wonder
regular
how
order.
they missed 15 of them.
Well, if you're talking about Mr. Blumenthal, which I assume you are, he had some that I didn't have, and I had some that he didn't have, and I was under no obligation to make any of his emails available unless I decided they were work-related. And the ones that I decided that were work-related, I forwarded to the state.gov accounts of the people with whom I worked.
Madam Secretary, is there any question that the 15 that James Cole turned over to us were work-related? There was no ambiguity about that. They were work-related.
They were from a personal friend, not any official government, not any government official, and I determined on the basis of looking at them what I thought was work-related and what wasn't. And some I didn't even have time to read, Mr. Chairman.
Are you
Mr.
telling
Chairman,
me the
regular order.
15, are you telling me that the
Chairman.
15, I will tell the gentlelady from California that I'm going to take a little bit extra time, just like everybody else has, and we can either do it this round, or we can do it next round.
May I make a simple inquiry about how many more minutes the chairman plans?
The fewer the interruptions, the quicker I can get done. I'll put it to you that way.
Okay.
How's that?
I'm just
The 15,
mindful of the time.
my question to you on the 15 is, did your lawyers find them and decide that they weren't work-related, or did they not find them?
Well, I don't know why he had emails I didn't, and I don't know why apparently I had emails he didn't. And all I can tell you is that I turned over every work-related email in my possession.
All right, I'm gonna make 2 more observations, and then we're gonna call it a night. The first observation that I would make is that when you speak to the public, you say, I turned over everything. That's, for the most part, a direct quote. When you talk to the public, you say, I turned over everything. When you talk to the court, you say, while I do not know what information may be responsive for purposes of this lawsuit, I have directed that all my emails on clintonemail.com in my custody that were or potentially were federal records be provided to the Department of State, and on information and belief that was done. Why the different explanation depending on who you're talking to?
Well, one is a shorthand, Mr. Chairman.
Well, why not just tell the court, I turned over everything?
Well, you know how lawyers are. They use more words perhaps than they need.
Trust me, I know that,
thought
and
you
they
might.
charge you for every one of them.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that, Mr. Chairman, and the clock is ticking.
Well, one more, and I'll pay Mr. Kendall's fee for the last question.
Oh, I don't
How's
think you
that?
want to do that, Mr. Chairman.
I probably can't do it. You see my point, though? You're very definitive when you're talking to the American people that you turned over everything.
That's right.
But there are those kind of lawyerly fudge words when you're talking to court on information and belief.
Well,
And the reality is, even tonight, you cannot tell us that you turned over everything because you didn't think you missed the 15.
well, I didn't have them. I turned over everything I had. Everything I had has
Which
been
means
turned
the
over
system
to the
you
State
had
Department.
somehow missed those 15.
Well,
Last question on your system. Mr. Cummings said that your email arrangement was inappropriate. I think the president may have said it was a mistake. You have said that it was a mistake. My question to you, Madam Secretary, is was it a mistake for the 4 years that you had that email arrangement? Was it a mistake for the almost 2 years that you kept the public record to yourself, or has it manifested itself as a mistake in just the last 6 months?
Well, since I believed that all of my work-related emails to .gov accounts were being captured and preserved, it wasn't until I was asked to help the State Department to fill in what they saw as some record-keeping gaps, not just with me, but with others. I did the best I could during those 4 years and thought that everything that I was emailing that was work-related was being preserved.
If you can find the source for the 90 to 95%, I would be grateful for it, and we would probably have fewer questions. If there is a source that you can provide that 90 to 95% were on the State Department system, then I'll know that I need to ask the State Department what took them so long. Because I'm just telling you, Madam Secretary, I got 8 emails the first time I asked, and now I've got over 1,500. So there's some disconnect there.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that is a fair question. And I'm not at the State Department any longer, but I do want to defend them. They are under the most extraordinary pressure to answer congressional inquiries. I saw a figure recently that FOIA requests have jumped something like 300%. They don't have the resources. They don't have the personnel. They take their responsibility of reading every single line, and as Ranking Member Cummings reminded us, having to redact personal information, personnel information, obviously they take it very seriously. I think they're doing the best they can, and I know that they've tried to be responsive to you and to the many other requests that have come their way.
Well, Madam Secretary, on behalf